Welcome to the application support session on Welcome Corps, the private sponsorship of refugees program. My name is Ann O'Brien, and I am joined by my colleague, Erin Howe. We are both members of the Welcome Corps team and have worked with community groups all over the country to sponsor refugee families. We're really excited to share with you information about this exciting new service opportunity. It's focused on the private sponsorship of refugees and strengthening communities. This session is going to provide you detailed information to help you with the entire application as you move forward to sponsor a refugee family. So let's get started first with the agenda. In this session, you're going to come to understand the differences between sponsoring a refugee you know and a refugee you do not know, which is called matching. The application process. You're going to learn about forming a sponsor group. That's absolutely required no matter what type of program you do with the Welcome Corps. The application itself, the core services that your group will be delivering in support of the refugee family, as well as the commitment form that has to be completed as part of your application. Online training, it's fun, you'll enjoy it, as well as the process to sponsor a refugee you do know that gets into more detailed information. And last but not least, showing that you're financially prepared. It's really important that the refugees get off to a great start in the U.S. And lastly, the application approval process. So first of all, a little bit more about the Welcome Corps program. The Welcome Corps is a new service opportunity for Americans inspired to welcome those seeking safety and in turn strengthening their own communities. This is a public-private partnership that is inspired by what America represents to so many around the world, a beacon of hope and refuge. Through Welcome Corps, a group of 5 or more Americans sponsor a refugee family to come to the United States. The group provides the refugee family with everything that they need for their first 90 days in the United States, and then afterward, it becomes a conversation between the family and the group as to how they move forward. This is a public-private partnership. It was begun within the Department of State, Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration, abbreviated as PRM, and they partnered with a group of organizations with expertise in refugee protection, resettlement, and welcome. This group of organizations is led by the Community Sponsorship Hub, and it includes Church World Service, HIAS, or Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, International Rescue Committee, IRAP, International Refugee Assistance Project, IRIS, Integrated Refugee and Immigrant Services, and Welcome.us. There are 2 ways to welcome through Welcome Corps. First of all is being matched with a refugee that you do not know. Sponsor groups are matched with a refugee they do not know, but who has already been approved to come to the United States. The second way to welcome through Welcome Corps is by sponsoring a refugee who you do know. Groups can sponsor a specific refugee that they already know, such as a family member or friend. In terms of sponsoring, it's a key element that we need everyone to remember, sponsoring one refugee family at a time. If you are interested in Welcome Corps in terms of being a matching sponsor, the primary sponsor that's indicated for the group can submit as many applications as they want for matching. However, the sponsor group can only welcome a new family after 90 days is successfully completed, including the 90-day report for a refugee family that has most recently arrived. If the group wants to sponsor multiple families through the matching program, that is allowed as well. You can submit as many matching applications as you would like. But again, at any given time, you may only be sponsoring, meaning having a family that you are currently supporting one at a time. Some groups may decide that they would love to welcome a family that they do not know through the matching program, and they would like to pursue sponsoring someone that they do know. That's fine as well. You can do both at the same time in terms of the application, but you can't support more than one family at a time once they come to the U.S. So what that means is you're going to have to wait a little bit in between families to make sure that each family gets off to a strong start. Lastly, if you're only interested in sponsoring someone you know, the primary sponsor cannot submit more than one application until 90 days after arrival of the previous refugee family. The key thing to remember here is you're sponsoring, actually working with in the United States, one refugee family at a time, no matter what the program is. Again, we want to make sure that the families get off to a great start. And we also want to make sure that as volunteers, you don't get overwhelmed with the needs of the family. So my colleague Erin is going to go into a little more detail about matching.
Okay, sponsor groups are matched with the refugee they do not know in the matching part of Welcome Corps. But these refugees have already been approved to come to the United States. Matching sponsors will be matched, like I said, with a refugee that they do not know from anywhere in the world. They will provide sponsors and refugees an opportunity to connect with new cultures, traditions, and communities this way. It builds on the American tradition of welcoming newcomers to our communities. It allows cities, towns, and rural areas outside of the traditional refugee resettlement sites to welcome refugee newcomers to their community. Sponsor groups can indicate a preference for supporting refugees with a specific background. We call these matching preferences. They may include preferences on spoken language, nationality, and case composition. And that means it's the number of refugees in a family group and whether or not this group would contain children and/or elders. We do encourage all groups to be very open-minded and welcome refugees from anywhere. The other part of Welcome Corps is sponsoring a refugee that you do know. Groups sponsor a specific refugee in this program they already know, such as a family member or a friend. So which refugees are eligible? Well, groups can sponsor refugees of any nationality who meet all of the following criteria. So let's go over that criteria. They must meet the definition of a refugee under US law, and you can see we've given you the code there. They must live outside of their home country. They do not already live in the United States. They live in a country where the US government is able to interview sponsored refugees and process their cases. They are registered as a refugee on or before September 30th, 2023 by UNHCR or the government of the country where they live, or for refugees of Cuban, Haitian, Nicaraguan, or Venezuelan nationality, the Form I-134 or 134A already filed on their behalf by September 30th, 2023. They must be at least 18 years old, or if they are a child, they're being referred with their parent. Without exception, anyone under 18 must be referred with biological parent or legal guardian. And lastly, they have not been previously denied for resettlement to the United States through the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program. There is an eligibility tool on welcomecorps.org that you can use to determine eligibility for someone that you do know. You may use this QR code to access that, or you may go to the welcomecorps.org website and access it through sponsors and the drop down, can I sponsor someone I know? And as you see in the middle of the page there, it will reference the refugee eligibility tool. To complete the eligibility tool, if the refugee you are trying to sponsor has a US RAP case number, you will need to access that number. In the middle of the screen, you can see a link to explain to you what that number is and where to find it and what it should be, the format of the number that you're looking for. So how soon will refugees arrive under Welcome Corps? Refugees coming through Welcome Corps will not arrive faster than other refugees coming through the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program. When a sponsor applies to sponsor a refugee they know, their application refers the refugee to the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program. The refugee must be processed by the U.S. government, and they will successfully complete refugee status screening, a security screening, and health screening.
Okay, next we're going to get into the application process itself. A quick overview. When you go to the Welcome Corps website and click on Apply, it outlines the key steps that you need to walk through in terms of getting your application together. The first part comes before you even start the application, and that is that you must form a private sponsor group of at least 5 individuals. As we mentioned before, that needs to be 5 U.S. citizens or legal or permanent residents. One of the other key steps is attending this application support session, which you've already done. You're also going to need to complete an online training. You can access that again on this page of the Welcome Corps website under Apply or Get Started. You're also going to need to complete background checks. Each person in your private sponsor group needs to do a background check. You'll be able to find that on the Welcome Corps website. You're also going to need to fundraise. You're going to need to put some funds aside for each refugee that you plan to sponsor. That dollar amount is $2,425 per refugee. This is money that you fundraise and hold on to, but it does need to get started in terms of getting the money together. You also need to research and make a plan to provide core sponsorship services. So on this page on the website, we have a link there that says make a plan, and it goes through the core sponsorship services that you'll need to provide for the refugees once they arrive. So in terms of the process overall, another way to think about it is a series of steps that you'll go back and forth between. These are all different sections of the application itself, because once you get started on pulling your group together, you can get them going on their background checks. You'll also be able to get them going in terms of making a plan for the core services and completing the training, but you'll end up coming back again and again to these different steps to get it all completed. The most important thing you need to remember is forming a private sponsorship group, and we're going to walk you through that. So first of all, the requirements to form a private sponsor group. The group must have 5 or more members. You can list up to 10, and that's great. The more support, the better. All group members must be U.S. citizens or U.S. permanent residents. They must also be at least 18 years old. And all group members must live in the city or community where you plan to resettle the refugee. You can include other members in your group that don't live in the immediate area from other states, but at least the core 5 that you list, the first 5, must live in the immediate area. You also have to identify a group coordinator. That's the person who's going to be starting the application and receiving notices as to the next steps that you need to complete. And your group must have a unique name. This is the fun part. It needs not to include Welcome Corps, because a lot of groups would have that name in there, but you want it to be specific to the initiative you're undertaking. So it could include something that involves the area where you're planning to resettle, or something about the group that has come together, but make it a unique name. Private sponsor group key tips. Group members can be from the same family, and they can live in the same house. You just want to make sure that you think about, if everybody were sick at the same time, who's going to help the refugee family get things done? Group members must also commit to helping resettle the refugee. Each person within the group needs to sign a commitment form and understand that they have playing a role with this with the U.S. government. Group members are not required to provide their own money or bank account information. You can fundraise from other sources, but you don't at an individual level have to provide your own bank account or funds. Also, each private sponsor group can sponsor one individual or refugee household at a time. We mentioned this before, but wanted to reinforce it. Once the refugee household arrives and you finish the 90-day resettlement period and complete the 90-day report, then you can apply to sponsor another refugee household. Remember that Welcome Corps refugees will not arrive faster than other refugees coming to the United States. Tips for forming a private sponsor group. If you feel like you have a couple people that are interested, but you need to gather some more, you need to keep in mind the group size. It has to be manageable for whoever is leading the endeavor. You want to think about the different roles. As you research and understand the core services that you need to provide, you're going to need somebody that's really comfortable working on employment. Also, somebody that's really comfortable with healthcare. There's a lot you need to get done for the family in terms of healthcare. Also, somebody that is not afraid of government processes, because you're going to need to get the family signed up for the benefits that they are eligible for and that they're going to need until they get on their feet. You want to think about skills, experience, connections. You want to include a lot of different people from different parts of the community because you don't know what the background of the family is going to be. You want it to be diverse in every sense of the word so that no matter what the faith community is or what the ethnicity is of the family that comes, that they feel like they can connect with others in the community and as broad a perspective as possible. Also, availability. You're going to need people that are available at different times of the week and weekends and days. So make sure everybody's not working full time. There are going to be a lot of government appointments that this family needs to get to. So you can find out more information about this that we've outlined on the Welcome Corps website. Go to sponsors and then resources and choose a samples private sponsorship group structure and roles. There we give you really great descriptions in each dropdown of how the different types of people that you want in your group. And the different types of people you want in your group are ones that are going to help you complete the core services for the family. So all of it's there on the website for you. Lastly, if you're still not sure how to grow your group, we have some ideas for you because guess what? We have helped literally hundreds of groups form and do this work across the country. So first and foremost, start talking to people about your interest in Welcome Corps. Tell them that you found out about this cool new program where you can welcome a refugee from anywhere around the world. Talk to friends, families, neighbors. Talk to the local faith communities. Ask if you can hold a coffee hour, whether it's a synagogue, a church, a mosque. Talk to folks at your employer, local clubs and service organizations, Rotary clubs, Lions clubs, civic associations. They're always looking for information about new programs that their folks can get involved in. Also, speak to former refugees and immigrants in your community. Let them know that you're interested in doing this and maybe they'd be interested in joining you. And last but not least, of course, you can use social media. Whatever your favorite platform is, you can definitely use that. We've had a lot of groups that have formed that way. So there are lots of like-minded folks out there. Just start talking it up wherever you go, and people will come to play a part in your group. So in terms of submitting your private sponsor group information, you're going to need to submit as part of the application the unique group that you've come up with, the name that you've come up with for your group. You're going to have to identify one person as well as a backup that will be the group coordinator. And as we said before, all group members must meet minimum requirements of being a U.S. citizen, permanent resident, at least 18 years old, and live in the resettlement community. If you already are working with a private sponsorship organization that's part of Welcome Corps, you'll indicate that if you already have one. But if you don't, that's perfectly fine. We're going to give you information on how to get ongoing support until you do have a private sponsorship organization. And once again, remember, no matter whether you're doing the matching program through Welcome Corps or sponsoring someone you know, you must form a private sponsorship group in order to get the application complete. Next, a quick touch base on background checks. Each person that is in your group is going to have to complete a background check. You're going to click on the link on the Welcome Corps application portal to be directed to a section of the Sterling Volunteers website. That's an organization that Welcome Corps is working with. And they are very trustworthy. They do background checks for organizations across the country. Each group member must register on the Sterling Volunteers website to complete the background check. And if you've completed a background check with Welcome Corps in the last 6 months, you don't need to do a new one right now to complete your application. You know you're in the right location if you see this picture when you click through from the Welcome Corps website or through the portal to a landing page that looks like this. It says Sterling Volunteers in the upper left-hand corner, and it says Welcome Corps, and that's how you know that you're safe to put the information through. Remember, when you complete your background check, you need the name and contact information that is your legal identification. So don't use nicknames that are not your legal name. Have your driver's license out or your state ID or your passport. It needs to match your legal identification. Each person is going to need to put that information through themselves, each member of the private sponsor group. And it's going to need to match what the primary coordinator, the coordinator of the application, puts on the application itself. Each background check is about $15, and the individual group member will get a personal email from Sterling Volunteers when the background check is completed. If you're prompted for something called a good deed code, we've given you that code here, and you'll also see on the next slide that that information is also on the Welcome Corps website. If you go under sponsors and then resources, there's a section you can click on that says completing your background check. There you have a step-by-step guide, which includes a tutorial video. And again, if you're prompted for a good deed code, you can enter this number. It's called 5 small case p 68 lowercase t, I, and j. Again, we've put it on the screen, but it's also on the Welcome Corps website. Next, Erin is going to walk you through some more details of the application process.
Great. So the first thing you're going to do to get started with your application is go to the welcomecorps.org website. And then you can see in the middle of the screen there where it says create an account to start your application on the apply section. So once you've created that account, you will be in the portal to do your application. To know step by step, you're going to watch this, so you will have no questions. But if you need to come back, this is a great chance to tell you can always come back and watch it again too. It is an on-demand on the website. Okay, so you're in the portal, and the first thing you need to do in the portal is to, after you've set up your account, you're going to form your group. Create your group in the portal and input each member's information there. You will identify a primary contact, or this is a group coordinator. The group coordinator will create the account for your group, and they will be the primary contact for your group. So all communication from Welcome Corps is going to go to that primary contact. They will be notified of things needed on the application, as well as when the refugee arrives and other key steps before then. So we mentioned creating a unique name for your sponsor group, and you're going to put that in your application. Make sure it does not include the words Welcome Corps, but it can be unique otherwise. Group members will need to include this name when they submit their background checks as well, so make sure everyone knows that unique name. And your unique group name should be on your financial information that you include with your application. Next, you're going to select a private sponsor organization. Again, this is if you're already working with a private sponsor organization. You can select that at this time. If you don't have one that you're working with, that's okay. Just select none or I don't know. Now let's go over some of the core sponsorship services. You'll need to include in your application the core sponsorship services that you will help the refugees with when they arrive to the United States. So you're going to click on the guides to understand the services required of your group embedded in the portal. And then these will include things such as the refugee health assessment, and it will have information on how to find the locations where that's available in your state. And then once you've found where you will take the refugees for their initial health assessment, you're going to include that on your application. So you can see here, they've put the name of the clinic and where that clinic is located. You will help the refugees get the health care that they need. You must research to find out where the refugee can go for medical care. This will include the initial refugee health assessment, which is required by the U.S. refugee program. It should be done in the first 30 days of arrival, and it will be completed at specific health clinics in each state. If you need help finding where that clinic is located, you can contact your state refugee health coordinator. They'll know where to point you in the right direction. You also must research and find where the refugee can go for a primary doctor or clinic that accepts Medicaid. Check where your federally qualified healthcare centers are. You'll need to find a dentist that accepts Medicaid or is not too expensive. Also, a pharmacy that accepts Medicaid. And look for mental health care doctors or clinics, preferably one with experience serving the refugee community. On the application, you're going to indicate where you have found these things. You're going to give the name of the clinic or doctor and their location. You're also going to provide ways to learn English. You'll help each adult to either learn or improve their English skills. This will include English language classes. These can be either online or in person, and informal language learning through conversation practice with the group itself. When selecting classes, you want to think about the times and locations of the classes, childcare for refugees who are parents and will need help with childcare. You're going to determine whether an online or in-person class is going to be best suited for the particular situation. And obviously, you want to consider the cost of the classes and look for those low-cost classes where you can. So on the application, you can see where you will indicate that you have found some resources for this need to learn language. And you're going to put the name of the school and then the location of the school. And then you'll also include information on translation and interpretation services and where you intend to find that support as well. If you don't speak the refugee's native language, you will need to use professional language interpretation. Quality interpretation and translation is important anytime you are communicating with the refugees. And professional interpretation is extremely important when discussing things like medical care and finances. You want to make sure all of that communication is done understandably to all parties involved. And you should never use children under the age of 18 for interpreters, because you really want to make sure that all of those details are covered well. So, how will you provide language interpretation and translation? You can use in-person interpretation. Contact people in your community who speak the language of the refugee. Maybe they know where to turn to for support with interpretation services. You can consider visiting restaurants, stores, or faith communities to find these people. Look for local cultural diaspora groups in your community. You can contact international students at nearby colleges or universities. Or of course, you can hire an in-person interpreter through a local company as well. If you cannot find in-person interpretation, that's okay. You can use a phone interpretation service. Tarjimly is a popular choice as a phone app for this service. It provides live translation over the phone for a small monthly fee. You can use another paid phone interpretation company as well. You don't want to use phone apps like Google Translate, except just for very basic daily communication. They are not reliable, and not all refugees read in their native language. So on the application, you're also going to show where you will go for core services such as benefits. You're going to identify the local offices for benefits and give the name of the office and the location, just like you've done before. You will need to guide the refugees through the process of getting any and all public benefits that they're eligible for. This may include Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, Refugee Cash Assistance, or Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, Medicaid, the WIC program, and Social Security Income Program. So make sure you're researching the office locations where you'll take them to apply and any websites that might be helpful when applying. If you need help finding any of these locations or information, you can always use a source like United Way's 211 phone number or the USA Hello Find Hello app. Okay, so now in the application, we're going to add your sponsor group members.
I can take it from here, Erin. So as you walk through this next part, you're going to add the sponsor group members as well as complete the sponsor commitment form. This is a screenshot of that component of the application itself in the portal. And you'll notice that there is a place where you have to upload a file. That is the sponsor commitment form itself. You can find the sponsorship commitment form on the website. And as you see here, we show you that the commitment form has a fair amount of content within it. You're going to need to read carefully and be sure that you check all boxes on all 6 pages. There is information about the different core services, and by checking each box, you're saying to the federal government that you are going to do all of those individual tasks with and for the refugee family. At the end of the form, there is going to be a space for each of the 5 members of your group to complete their name and signatures. And then you're going to save that form and upload it as part of your application. As we said before, each member of the private sponsor group must agree to work with and the group as a whole. They need to commit to providing the services that the refugee will need after arrival, and they have to follow the code of conduct set forth by the U.S. government. Different parts of the commitment form include things such as providing a safe, clean, and affordable home. Your group will need to provide the refugees with appropriate housing for the 90-day sponsorship period. You're going to select housing. You're going to select housing while considering whether you need temporary housing, and you're definitely going to need permanent housing as well. We mentioned the need for temporary housing because housing is at a little bit of a crisis right now in the United States. So you need to make a plan for providing housing on a temporary basis until you find that permanent housing. You also need to identify and research the rental rates and how much you need to put down in terms of a security deposit for local apartments, the location and access to buses, employment, and schools. And if you need more information to guide you in understanding that part of the commitment form, there's a housing tip sheet that's linked on the Welcome Plan on the Welcome Corps website. A few other things to consider as you look at this part of the commitment form. You need to provide safe, clean, affordable home for a refugee. You know the refugees may live with the sponsors temporarily if they're close relatives, but the sponsors must still plan to help refugees find long-term housing. For matching sponsors, being matched with refugees that you don't know, the refugees must have their own housing and should not be living with the sponsor. You also need to take into account that you're going to have to furnish the home. You're going to need to provide all of the furniture. You're going to need to research utilities, electricity, water, and gas to understand how soon you can sign those utilities over to the new family. You're going to need to secure cell phones for each adult. So you're going to want to research low-cost cell phone plans that they'll be able to afford after the first 90 days. You're also going to research clothing. You're going to need to find out what you need in terms of clothing for every season. Whether they're coming from a warm climate or not, you need to make a plan, particularly for substantive winter gear if you live in a colder climate. And also think about baby and child items. And for all of the above, think about who can get things donated that are in really good shape, or whether or not you're going to have to buy certain things. In terms of the commitment form, you're also going to identify that you're going to be able to get them the essential documentation they need for life in the United States. This includes helping to follow up on the employment authorization document. This will be applied for by the U.S. government as they are transitioning from overseas to the United States. But with any other government document, you're probably going to need to follow up if it doesn't arrive on the time frame expected. So you need to research that in advance, as well as getting a Social Security card. Again, the Social Security card will be applied for as part of their transition from overseas to the United States, but it might be delayed, and you need to be able to access that in order to help them get employment. Also, you need to research getting their state ID or driver's license. They may not be able to take the driver's license test in your state in their own language. And if they don't learn English yet, you can't rely upon them driving at this outset. So research getting a state ID card for them that doesn't involve a driver's license. You're also going to need to complete something that is called the AR-11 or change of address form. This is something that the U.S. government asks the new refugee families to complete anytime they move when they are within the United States, so that the U.S. government can send them important information. So if you're going to have them in temporary housing and then move to permanent housing, they have to complete the AR-11 inside of 10 days of doing so. Last but not least, registering for selective service. If there is a member of the family that is a male aged 18 to 25, they will have to register for selective service. And you're going to need to research that in advance, how to do that, because the documentation will not immediately arrive at their address. So you need to make sure that they do that, because it does impact that individual's ability to get a green card and citizenship if they have not registered for selective service. Also on the commitment form, you're going to just commit to helping them to get oriented to life in the United States. You're going to need to cover certain basic things in terms of rights and responsibilities and key laws that will be different from their home country. We'll give you resources to doing that, but it's important that you understand when you're signing the commitment form that there's a fair amount of research you need to do in order to be prepared to help them with these things. You're going to need to help them not just find employment, but set up their own bank account and help them understand how to manage their money within a fairly bureaucratic system that they're not used to in terms of banking and otherwise. And last but not least, key organizations in the local community, such as food banks, how to get energy assistance programs, things like that, that will help them in the local community as they move forward and manage their own lives. Also in the commitment form is your group agreeing to help them find employment. This is absolutely critical. Refugees will be eligible to work immediately upon arrival in the United States using a form called the I-994. This is something that you're going to help them download once they have arrived. Refugees are not allowed to work for sponsors. So sponsors, if you have a business and you are planning to employ the refugees within that, that is not allowed within this program. You need to help them find other forms of employment. So information that you can research in advance and think about is who might be within your group a good person to mentor them to find and keep that job, who can help them with different applications as well as practice interviews. You're also going to need to cover certain things that they need to understand in terms of knowledge about the workplace culture and norms and rules. Ideally, you'll research and find out about workplace development programs that are not provided by your group, but that are provided in the local community to help people with job search. That way, they have resources that they can rely upon in addition to your group. And of course, you're going to have somebody in your group that is committed to helping them to prepare their resume that includes a reflection of experience and skills they have from their home country, and to complete those ever difficult and annoying online applications. They're going to need help completing those. Anybody that lives within the United States needs help completing an online application for employment. And I think I'm going to let Erin take this from here to talk to you about education and childcare.
Great. Also on the commitment form, you will help parents enroll their children under 18 in school. So this is a must that all children under 18 be enrolled in school. Make sure that they have the required vaccinations and documents that they'll need to get into school. And check if your school district has special programs for refugee and immigrant students. You're going to look at Head Start and Early Start and any other preschool programs. And of course, you'll want to identify free or low-cost childcare programs for the younger children so that the parents can go to work. And then you're going to need for your application the training certificate. Let's talk a little bit about that. So when you are on the portal, you will see that you have a section that says complete training. This is training that at least one person of the sponsor group must complete, but we really recommend everyone take part in this training. It's really good training. You will receive a certificate in your email after you complete the training, and you want to make sure that you save that certificate as it will be uploaded in your application. So this is what the training will look like. It's called Sponsorship Essentials for Welcome Corps. And you can see on the left-hand side there, it goes over what will be covered in this. You're going to learn about Sponsorship 101, which is the basics of all of the sponsorship services that you will be doing. You're going to talk about key mindsets, making sure that everyone is focused on getting the refugee family ready for success and self-sufficiency. And then there's going to be a chance for you to have group discussions. You'll take this information back to your group and talk about how you all will make sure that you're covering everything you need to and thinking about the right things. It will go into some deep dives in some support areas, and then how you will also go from day one to day complete, and how you will handle going onwards and upwards with your family. Like I said, you will receive a certificate of completion. You want to hold on to this as it will be uploaded as part of your application. So this is what that certificate will look like. And to upload the certificate, you'll see in the middle of the screen there under that section, it says upload files. You'll just simply click on that. You'll have to find the location where you saved the certificate on your computer and click upload to attach it to your application. Next on your application, if you're sponsoring someone that you do know, you'll need to include the refugee information as part of your application. So if you would like to sponsor a refugee you know, you will be required to provide details about the refugee, which include their name, birth date, the situation that led to their becoming a refugee, and complete additional application steps. When you apply to sponsor a refugee, you are referring them to the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program, also known as US RAP. You must provide accurate and complete information about the refugee. All information you provide will be reviewed by the U.S. government officials. Before entering the refugee information into your sponsor application, we recommend that you do complete the refugee eligibility tool for every adult refugee that you would like to sponsor. And use the Sponsor Someone You Know tutorial at this website. We'll have a QR code for you on the next slide. And do that before entering the information into your sponsor application. These tools will help you understand what is needed for the application itself. Like I said, here are those QR codes. We'll give you just a second to get those if you need them. And if you don't have a QR reader, you can just use the website there on the screen as well. So on the application to add the refugee information, remember, you can only sponsor one family or individual at a time. What we consider a family is up to 10 people. You must enter the head of household first, and that person must be 18 years old or older and able to answer for the entire family. You'll answer the questions in order. Your answers at the beginning of this section will impact questions that need to be asked later. You'll need a proof of registration or identification card. All refugees must be registered by September 30th, 2023 to the UNHCR or the government where they currently live. This registration means they have a document or card to verify the status. If no proof of registration is available, you cannot submit an application for this person. There will be a very limited number of exemptions. And then you can see in the middle of the screen, you can use a guide to assist you. And here's what that will look like on the application portal itself, where you enter all of those details. In the application, you will answer these questions. Did the refugee previously suffer any harm in their country of origin? Who harmed them? Do not name specific individuals for this. Were they harmed because of their ethnicity, religion, nationality, political opinion, or for being a part of another type of group? And do they fear they would be harmed if they returned to their country of nationality? You will explain why the refugee was forced to flee. Be sure to include what harm they experienced directly in their country of origin. Include who harmed them, approximate dates the harm occurred, and when they fled, month or season and year. Why the refugee was unable or unwilling to seek the protection of law enforcement in their country. Why they fear returning to their country of origin. And what, if any, harm they may currently be experiencing in their country of refuge. And any additional information that demonstrates a well-founded fear of persecution. Note that harm means not only a physical attack, but broadly an extreme disruption to normal life. Remember, if you are sponsoring someone you know, you can only do one application at a time. You must complete 90 days successfully, including that 90-day report, before putting in another application to sponsor someone else.
Okay.
On the application, Anne will talk to you about financials.
So the next section covers showing that you're financially prepared. Again, we mentioned this because you probably want to start this before you even get going on your application. And you'll go back and forth between the different elements of the application, but we want you to really focus on getting started with the fundraising because it's important that the family have access to significant funds that they can control once they get here. So you're going to need to provide each refugee with basic financial support during the sponsorship period of 90 days or more if you choose to do so. You must provide a minimum of $2,425 per refugee. This financial support includes cash and may include some donated materials or services, such as furniture or housing. You need to create a budget with detail of all these costs. And that is what you're going to use as your basis for fundraising. You need to include things that are one-time costs, that like buying furniture and household items and setting up utilities, but also monthly costs, such as rent, ongoing utility costs, and food. In terms of this financial support, you're going to need to research the costs of all the things the refugees will need as part of their new life. They will come likely with only one small bag with limited clothing. If you get items like furniture donated, make a plan for how you're going to solicit, collect, and store the donations. Add up the total cost to determine the amount of financial support you'll need for the first 90 days. Also, as we mentioned before, in terms of helping them to get signed up for local benefits, as you do that research, you may find that state benefits are somewhat delayed or that helping them get a job will be delayed. So provide a little bit of a contingency or a little bit of flexibility in terms of your plans for those first 90 days. Ultimately, the total amount is what you will need to fundraise to support the refugees that you're going to be sponsoring. When you begin fundraising, you need to make sure that you know that you have to raise at least $2,425 per refugee. So you're going to need to multiply that number times the number of people in the family. And you're going to need to compare that to the total cost that you listed out to be able to support the family for at least the first 90 days. You're going to hold these funds in and for the family until they arrive. After the refugee arrives, you will spend that to help them get started. You may need more than $2,425 per refugee, depending on the cost of living in your community and the family size. We often get asked the question, If it's a family of 4, a family of 5, can you just tell me how much it's going to cost in terms of the total budget? Well, we don't know what the costs are of living in your particular community anywhere in the United States. That's why we tell you that you're going to need at least this minimum per refugee, but that you need to build a detailed budget based upon the costs in your community of supporting a family of the size you're considering. Only you can answer the question of how much it costs for a family to live in your community. But it is a question you need to answer so that you can tell people when you start fundraising what your goal is. You need to know the total goal for the total budget. So, proving you have raised the funds. Before you submit your application, you have to raise at least 60% of that minimum. So 60% of 2,425 is 1,455 per refugee. You have to submit evidence that you've raised at least the 60%. That can be a bank statement, a letter from a faith organization or other non-for-profit, or a GoFundMe screenshot. If you choose to use a bank statement, it needs to be a separate bank account. It can't be your personal bank account or a personal bank account of another member of the group. The funds in the bank account are only to be used for this project. You can have either, ideally, the sponsor group name, the unique one that you created for your group listed on the account, or many members of the group listed on the account. Personal accounts that do not have the group name listed as a nickname are not accepted. The personal bank accounts that are used for other purposes are not accepted. So you can't have a business bank account being used for this purpose. Include the name of the financial institution or bank in the screenshot that you're submitting for the account and include the total fund balance. If it's a not-for-profit letter as evidence of your financial support, then you're providing that because you have partnered with a not-for-profit organization that has agreed to hold the funds that you raise as on behalf of your sponsor group. It can be a faith community or a faith-based organization. It can be a foundation or other nonprofit. It could be a civic association, a Rotary Club, whatever the case may be. But if a not-for-profit organization is holding your funds, then you must provide a letter from that organization that is on their letterhead stating the total amount of money that they are holding for the sponsor group, and it needs to name the group. If you're using GoFundMe as evidence, you can raise funds through the online website, GoFundMe.com, and you can set that GoFundMe account up using this name, the unique name that you chose for your sponsor group. You need to make sure that's visible on the donations page. And if you're going to use the GoFundMe account to provide the evidence, you need to submit a screenshot of that page showing the total amount that your group has fundraised for this initiative. A quick few fundraising tips. Engage your local community in the fundraising ask. Feel free, don't be shy. Go ahead and ask family, friends, coworkers. Use email or, as we mentioned, GoFundMe site. And on the Welcome Corps website, there is a fundraising guide that pulls together tips that we've learned from working with literally hundreds of community groups that have done this work. Note, Welcome Corps does not monitor who donates to the project and does not require that each of the individual group members contribute funds. We just need to have the proof that you have fundraised at least the minimum needed and at least 60% of that amount. If you're able to get the funds donated from the local community or other sources, that is absolutely fine. So once you have the funds gathered and you are in your application in the application portal, you will see that in that section saying show you're financially prepared, that you have to indicate the total number of people that you have said you would sponsor. So that could be you said you'd sponsor from anywhere from 2 to 5 people. You want to select the total number, which would be 5. And then it will calculate how much you have to provide documentation of having fundraised. As part of that, at the bottom of the page, you'll see that you're going to have to upload a document that provides proof of the funds. So that is where you're going to upload the screenshot of your GoFundMe page or the bank statement that we talked about or the organizational not-for-profit letter. Next, Erin's going to tell you what will happen after you submit your application.
Okay, so after you've submitted your application, there are some things to watch out for and know what's coming next. Let's talk about those. So this is showing that you have put in your application and it says, thank you. You're on your way to changing your lives and your community. So let's talk about some next steps. So all applications will be reviewed by trained Welcome Corps team members. And then upon their review, your application may be approved or it may be marked pending. And this simply means that you'll need to complete some additional tasks or clarify some details before your application is complete. And your application may be denied. To know what status your application is in, you're going to want to look at that application dashboard that you signed up for to complete the application. This is where you'll get all updates and notifications. You receive notifications about additional tasks if they need to be completed. You'll respond immediately to these and complete the task by the due date provided by the Welcome Corps. If you do not complete a task by the due date, your application will go to the back of the line. So you want to make sure that you're on top of those and get those completed as quickly as possible. This is showing you where you can check that status. You're going to go to the application dashboard, which is indicated there in the middle of the screen. And once you're there, it will tell you what you need to do. Also, check your emails. Emails will be sent to the email address that the sponsor group used to register their account. If you're asked to upload additional documents, you must do it through the application dashboard. Do not do that through email. Welcome Corps expects to receive thousands of applications from those wanting to sponsor a refugee they know. Welcome Corps cannot provide updates via email or phone on the status of your application. It will all be done through that portal. So make sure you keep an eye on that dashboard. All communications with Welcome Corps will come through that dashboard. Please allow several months for Welcome Corps to process your naming application. If you're trying to sponsor someone you know, it could take some time. Please note that matching applications are typically processed in about a month, since they do not require a refugee documentation review. So after your application is approved, for matching groups, once your application is approved, your group will be assigned to a private sponsor organization if you do not already have one. And your PSO will give you more information and support for your next steps and what to expect. You will also receive a survey that will help to influence your match with the refugee family. It includes information about your sponsor group and community, and it gives an opportunity for you to notify Welcome Corps of any preferences your group has, such as country of origin, language, family composition. Then your group will be matched with a refugee, and ultimately the refugee will arrive to your community. So if you're sponsoring a refugee you do know, when your application is approved, your group will be notified that your application is approved, and groups sponsoring a refugee they know may be connected to a PSO if they do not already have one. The refugees you named will be referred to the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program, also known as USRAP. The U.S. government will process the refugee and conduct health and security screenings. If the refugee passes all of the screenings, USRAP will arrange transportation to the United States. Welcome Corps will inform your group of the arrival date when it's available. And then ultimately, the refugee will arrive to your community. After the refugees arrive, your group will provide all of the support and services that you described in your welcome plan. You will utilize the funds that you raised to support the refugees. You will receive ongoing support and guidance from your private sponsor organization. And of course, you'll get reminders regarding those 30-day and 90-day reports that you're required to do, and then a 6 and 12-month survey. We thank you for sponsoring refugees through the Welcome Corps and wish you great success in your application process and also your resettlement process. If you need ongoing support with the application, you can use this QR code to sign up for one-on-one meetings with Welcome Corps staff who will assist you with any ongoing questions that you have. You can also sign up at this Calendly link if you can't access that QR code, or you can also find a link back on the welcomecorps.org website. And of course, you can always go to your PSO or private sponsor organization for guidance if you're already working with one.
If you still have questions after watching this on-demand video, you can still sign up for a live application support session. We'll cover the same content. However, we'll be able to answer questions in the Q&A section. And again, we want to make sure that you know that you can access ongoing one-on-one support through our Welcome Corps application support team. Again, the QR code is shown on the screen, and we want to make sure that you can access that. Also, because some of the coaches may speak a language that you would prefer to have guidance in, such as Swahili or Pashto or Dari or Arabic. So again, we really want you to consider using the one-on-one support to get your questions answered, or attending another live application support session so that we make sure that you get all of your questions answered before you submit your application. One last reminder is that your application needs to be thoroughly completed. While the Welcome Corps team will ask for additional information, if the responses do not come back timely enough, or there's too much information missing in your first submission, completion of that will go to the back of the line and they'll move on with other applications. So we really encourage you to take your time and use all the different resources, including the one-on-one coaching through Zoom, so that you can make sure that the application you submit is as accurate and complete as possible. Thank you for going on this journey with us, and we look forward to meeting you, and we look forward to meeting, hopefully, the refugees that you are welcoming soon.